What is going on, you guys? I wanted to share some of my code, so down below you have two GitHub links. One is for the firmware for this chip here. The other one is application software. It's a MAUI application. MAUI stands for Multi-Platform Application User Interface. And basically it's just a way of having one set of code and deploying it on Android or Windows or iOS or what have you. What we got here is we have Android. And all code is available. I mean, code to... Let me just stop this. Code to make the icon. Code to, you can change out whatever icon. I just have something I found in there. Change the name of the icon. Change this, the background color. Change the foreground icon. All of this is available. I just have placeholders in there. Just consider them placeholders. And we have this application. And I have it. I have this weird thing where the picture up here is coming on when I hit open, but that's not normal. That's not. And we'll get to that in a minute or a couple minutes or something. So basically I just have this application here, and it has a simple protocol between it and the device over here on the left through Bluetooth. And it's just a way, I mean, that LED represents, could be anything. Could be like a solenoid, could be, to unlock something, to lock something, could be a motion sensor. There's inputs, there's outputs, there's analog to digital. This thing, I paid $16 for 3 of these things. And it has A to D on it, it has Wi-Fi on it, it has Bluetooth on it. It's amazing what these things have. And then the support, the code that's out there, forget it. You can do anything. I mean, even if you don't know that much, you can struggle through it. And you can make this thing, it's scary what you could probably do with this. Anyway, let's back off of that, because we don't want to be scary. But so I have this other thing on the right here to pair with that, which is not so easy to put together for the average person. It's like this application. So I gave all the code, every last little micro whatever of code is in that GitHub sample. Now what you need is you'll need Visual Studio 2022 to run the code for this. And you'll need Visual Studio Code, very similar sounding name, Visual Studio for this 2022, and Visual Studio Code for this. And also in addition, you need to install the you need to install PlatformIO extension on Visual Studio Code for this chip. And Visual Studio Code is a little finicky, so you want to make sure you allow everything to install. Don't hit cancel. It sits there. It says, "Oh, you want to cancel like it's trivial." And sometimes people hit cancel. What happens is when you go to compile for these chips, you'll get a bunch of, I can't find this. It's C++, right? I can't find this file. I can't find that H file. I can't find, and you don't even go chasing them. That's usually, especially when they're talking about like deep libraries like Arduino and stuff, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with those libraries. It's usually because the installation was stopped halfway through. And one thing about Visual Studio Code, it might be finicky if you cancel or mess up an installation, but it's really good if you there's a couple of .platform.io, there's a couple directories. You can just look it up on the internet. You can just delete, and then Visual Studio Code, you restart it, and it'll find everything it needs to. It's very good. It's very resilient and robust like that. Like some things you install and reinstall, and you break it, and it never comes back properly. Visual Studio Code's pretty good. It comes back. It doesn't like just get totally corrupted. So Visual Studio Code with PlatformIO extensions. Also want to install Git extensions if you want to download the code, because with PlatformIO, with Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, you can access the GitHub code directly from inside the application. Here for Visual Studio Code, you would need the Git extension as in addition to the PlatformIO extension. Okay, very good. So let's take a look at the actual code for, because we're not going to really talk about the chip. We'll talk a little about the code so you can orient yourself. And if you're a developer, then this might be boring. But if you're not a developer and you just want to kind of mess around with the code, I think this is going to be really cool. There's a lot of advanced. Let me not even try to say that. So let's take a look. Let's open this up, and basically what I have here is Visual Studio, and basically there's actually a menu called Git, and you just say clone, and all you have to do is put the link that I got below in here and then specify where you want this thing, and it'll boom. Now I'm not going to do that right now, but that's how easy it is to just get. You don't even have to browse or nothing for the code. I mean, the links below, if you click on them, it'll take you to the code, but it's just as easy. You just paste it in Visual Studio. So that's the first thing you would do, is just come in Visual Studio, clone. Oh, look at that. It's one of the clone repositories. Same thing. You know, paste in. All right, we're okay. Blah 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 blah. You should end up with something that kind of looks like this. This one is disattached, so there would be green arrows and stuff and some weird stuff going on. But so you should have your code. Now the main thing is, if you look at this app, there's 2 pages, and I wanted to give you more than one page so that you could sort of get some navigation, because then you can. Creating more than one page is kind of very aggravating, but creating another page when you already have an extra, it's a lot easier. So we have this setup. This is the other page. Not to show you the page so much, but that there's just 2 pages. Okay, I know. Well, you got it. There's 2 pages. But if you look over here at views, those 2 pages are represented here. There's main page and settings page. Okay. Now what these are? See this XAML? These are XAML files, and this is main page right here. This, for example, this bot up here. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to run the code. This code is actually the last time I compiled. So now what I'm doing is I'm running the code on Visual Studio. Let me stop and show you something. Okay, see, it's going to restart, and now I'm debugging on the device right now. But I wanted to show you one thing before I started doing that. So let me just come over here. I can go build, and can I say okay? All right. So I can just hit the red button over here. Boom. Stop. Everybody stop for a second. Okay. My point I wanted to make is, how do you connect up to your Android? You have to put in debugging mode, and then on visual, and I don't know, did I say you have to debugging mode? It's like a developer option. You just look it up online. You'll find it, enable debugging mode on my Android. And this is an old Android, so you should be able to use, I think, not very, very, very old, but kind of old Androids should work with this laptop. Not laptops. What's the other thing? Tablets or whatever. So once you get debugging enabled on this, then you plug in your USB right in, and if you have Visual Studio on Windows, then you should be able to open up this menu and say Android local device, and your device should be there just magically, because there's an actual part of Visual Studio that should scan for it. You select it, and then you'll see it here. And see the green arrow? It's like play, right? So you just hit play, and what it'll do is, you're seeing at the bottom, it's compiling. And since I was already pretty much built, it's going to go kind of fast, so it already just started opening the application. But now you'll notice you don't see the green anymore, and you'll see this red up here. So that's the way to stop it, but I'm not going to stop it. But what we are is we're in debug mode right now. So right now visibility is false for that image, and I don't think it'll come on again. Yeah, okay. So now we have the application kind of looking like the original one. And I did alter this slightly. This is visible. What in the code that you'll download from GitHub, this is visible doesn't even exist, right? It's just, it looks like it just looks. Where's my keyboard? It just looks like that. You know, the original code that you get from GitHub. So let me put this back in. And now you notice when I got rid of that, what happened? Right? Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. When I got rid of that, the visibility just became its default value. So that's just showing that we're actually hooked up to this thing live. So let me go and make that false, and then we're now this is interesting, because right here it says ESP32 controller is actually this thing called big description. Now I could get rid of this binding and say whatever, right? But see, that's not very sophisticated, because now it's stuck at that. Like if we just compile this program and run, it never changes. It's just whatever. Now maybe we don't want it to change. In some cases you would just put it in line like that. But I wanted to give you something a little bit more sophisticated. Now what we have here is we have this thing says binding description. And basically binding is a term used in the XAML to say, well, we're going to look for something called big description. And the question then is like, well, what do you mean you're going to look for something? What do you mean? So let's go to a fundamental key thing about any page, whether it's main page or here's settings page, which is just, you can tell what the XAML looks like. It's a little bit, it's like got a lot of these colors in it, where regular class is more dry looking, more straightforward. But any one of these XAML classes has the capability to have a view model. It doesn't have to have a view model. And a view model is where the XAML is going to look, right? Where do we have? Big description, right? So we're telling the XAML, look, we want to bind the text here to this thing called big description. The next question is, well, what do you mean? To where? And that's where we say, well, we already told you. Your binding context is going to be this main page view model, which is a class, which is this guy right here. And if I go to the very top, there's a class, and the only thing to make something capable of being a view model is that it's a class. That's it, a public class. This other stuff over here, this is extra. Don't even need to worry about that right now. So we have a class called main page view model. And then what did we say? We said, okay, so when you have a thing you're bound to, look at this class. Okay, fine, says the XAML. And then what we do is we come over here and we say, hey, we want to bind you to this thing called big description. And you can get crazy with these bindings. You want to see some interesting reading? Look up bindings for WPF or MAUI, or any WPF will take you there, or Xamarin, bindings in general. But anyway, so we say big description. So then what we do is we say, well, is there something over here called big description? So actually, I'm just going to do the cheap thing. Wait a minute, that's not what I pasted. Big description. So I'm going to see, will it take me, go to definition? Ah, yes. So there it is. We have this thing, this public string called big description, and it's very simply returning the value ESP32 controller. Now, what this is it enables us to we could bind, and this is really something that I'm not doing in this application, but you could change what you're bound to. Meaning that you could bind to some other class that has the same exact property called big description, but gives back something else, right? So we're not going down that road here in this video. What the key point that I'm making here is that these pages, settings page also, settings view model. Now I have this class called view models. There's much more than 2 in here, because there's support for view models. There's relay view model, MVVM, pattern, uses a relay command. So there's a little bit more involved with view models. There's a base view model because you want to have notifications. For example, if big description were to change, you have to notify the application so that it can update the XAML. So, right, because there are things right on here. For example, on the application, when I ask the chip for its name and I send that request, well, I have to change the value behind this response. So let's find this response box, right? So let's do that. Where's the response box? Response. I think this is it. Okay, so we have a label and then a frame, right? We do have a frame. Okay, so this is it. So here it is, status description. So this text in here is actually bound to a thing called status description, and because main page is, because the binding context is set to this class, then that means that what we're bound to must be a property in this class. It may not be a property in this class, but in that case you'll get nothing, right? It would have to be in this class. So let's status description. Do we have this? Status description. I don't see that. I don't see status description. But you know what? Anybody know where it is? Let's assume it exists. Anybody know where it is? Right. It's in the model base, because all these view models are going to have some feedback text that I want to just display to the user. So in my view model class, so I don't have to go and keep recreating it over and over and over again, I have a public string called status description. And that's all it is. It's just a string. This set property here, this set property is the notification. When status description is set, this set property method will notify the system that status description has changed. When the system knows that status description has changed, it will update the UI. So all you need to do to update the UI is set the value of status description. You don't have to address the UI. You don't have to turn it on or off or instantiate anything. To set status description, all that's needed is for you to... Where did my base go? Oh, geez, I lost it. Stay here. All that's needed is for anyone to simply set status description. And that's what happens when the response comes back. So let's see. Can we see that in the main page view model? Everything that happens in main page is handled in main page view model. So once you have all your bindings and stuff set up, you can kind of ignore your XAML. And now you're doing all your work. So I know that we have a function called onCom event. And here is when communication is received. And look, status description is set almost every time. So I think status description is set here. So let's try that. Let's send and see if it'll break there. So let's get device name. Ah, look, it stopped. And then let us step once to assign status description. And I'm hovering over it. Can you see that? Can you see the status description value? Or we can hit, we can do the watch. And I can add, oh geez, I hate right clicking on this stuff. Status. Right. And go forward. And then now actually, anything that we get from this response. So let's go for the get LED status. Send. Now all we're getting, now status description, you see here is nothing. So we hit F10, LED status is on. And just by the simple setting of that property, that sets the UI. So there it is, man. That's how you that's how you can move values back and forth. And by the way, this onCom event, right? Notice it happens at a different time. This is just running and these events come in. So it's not like like when I send and get the status back, it's not that you send, and then you wait, and then you get the status, right? It looks like that. Like, see how these go gray for a second? That's not waiting. All it did is disable those buttons so that you couldn't hit it twice, right? That's the purpose of disabling these buttons. And you might wonder, how do these buttons get disabled? So let's look at the command of send. Where's the send command? What is this command called? Go to send command. So let's find where we're using this. Okay. Okay. So when we hit send, now I forget what my point was. Does anybody remember what my point was? Anyway, let's see what happens when I hit send. Oh, okay, I remember. Right. Okay, boom. Now the send command is sort of like a function. So if you notice, what happens is all I do is we come in here and we send data. And then we go to, here, let's do it again. We send, and then we'll walk right to the end of the function. We send the data, right? So what are we going to send? We're going to ATS for, all right, get status. Okay, so we're going to send this, and then I'm walking, and then we are, okay. Input is blocked. Input is blocked is what sets these things to gray. So what happens is we set these inputs to gray, and then they sit gray until we get a response or we time out. And that is either happening in cancel timeout or close comm service. So if we go to close comm service, we'll see the input is blocked is reset. And it'll be reset in also close. Okay, anyway. On comm timeout. Reset. Oh, maybe that's where it needs to get fixed. Oh no, close comm service. That will input is blocked. Okay, but anyway, if we do a search for input is blocked, what it is it's set to the. Let me find in here. No, input is blocked. Right. So what is input is blocked doing in the XAML? It's on the enabled. So it's on a bunch of these buttons and things, right? All these buttons, everything has this input is blocked hooked up to their enabled. But notice it's the opposite, right? So you have to use this convert. You can't say bound to the opposite of input is blocked. You actually have to say bound to input is blocked, and if right, because this is enabled when the input is not blocked. Right? So in order to get that condition, we have to use this converter. So this just inverts the Boolean. You'd be like, how come I can't just like put a not in front of it, meaning like a exclamation, or you can't do that in XAML. If you want to get the opposite of the Boolean value that you're bound to, you have to use an opposite converter. And that's basically what this does. So what this does, because I could get rid of the converter, right? I could just, right? Let's say I got rid of that converter. Now look what happens. Now we're the opposite. Now watch when I hit LED off. That'll come on, right? So that's what the inverted bool converter. Now I believe there are actually canned versions of this. This is my own fresh version, but it's just such a simple thing. You're just returning. And actually, where is that? There's a thing called converters, and there's a here. Look how simple it is. Right, here's some. I forget what this is for. I'm not going into it. But here's the inverted bool. Right, return not. See, that's where the not happens. This is the inverted bool converter. and all that's involved. So converters and behaviors are things that you're going to use in XAML. But don't worry about that. Don't worry about any of that right now. You can get to that. The main thing is that, main page, you look at these real simple things like the label, and then you'll see that it's bound to something. And then you can see, or even status description. Studying how status description is dealt with would give you a lot of information. Looking at status description and comparing it to the communications that when I say look at status description behavior, I mean in the class. And you'll see status description behavior is really intertwined with everything, because everything is like indicating what happened. So, right, it's like, right, like for example, here's COM timeout. This is when I try to talk to something, right? If let me set up to something that's not going to respond. Come on. Let me edit this. I'm going to hook up to one of my Bluetooths that I know is not hooked up. It's not going to respond, right? So I'm going to hook up, and it's going to time out. Right? It's just going to run. It's going to run. It's going to run. Nothing's going to respond. And at some point, right, you in your program, you have to say, wait a minute, I give up. I time out. So what happens is that happens in this function right here on COM timeout. And we put the status description. And instead of having to rewrite it every time, this is a fixed constant no message response. Right? So if I go to definition of this, right? No response from system, and that's what we see. No response. This can get overridden. This can get overridden by other stuff. So this is a little bit more specific. So, but this got written later after this right here, which is fine because it's more descriptive of what's actually happening. So the key is you have views and you have their view models. And really the two view models you have is you have your settings view model for your settings page, and you have your main page view model for your main page. And your work is going to be happening in your view model. That's where your work is done. And you have all kinds of other things going on. For example, in those multi-platforms, right, your specific Android stuff is going to be in here. Specific Windows stuff is going to be in here. I broke the Windows. It worked, and then I broke it. It has something to do with the splash screen. If you pick the right splash icon or something, it'll start working in Windows, and not really, because I have to write a driver for the serial port in Windows. So forget about Windows, but I don't even know what this is. This. Right, but there's iOS, which at some point, maybe someday, I'll get to it. So here's your platform-specific stuff. One other thing, key thing in this is this app shell model. You're going to see this all over the place because this houses the actual communications objects and some other things. There's also this activity control, which, remember, these classes in here, these view models, even though they're called view models, they have no idea about that they're being used in views. So I have this overall activity control. Oh man, I don't even know how to go into this, but here, like if you look at the interface, go to definition. You actually, each platform has to ask, what's the screen width, what's the DPI and the density. And for Android, we have to request some permissions. Invoke haptic feedback is just a fancy way of saying make it vibrate for a split second. So actually, like you can call that from anywhere. For example, let's just say I'm in my view model and it makes no sense in this function, but let's say I'm in this function. I can say app shell model, and it's a singleton, so you don't instantiate. It's not static either. You say instance, and then I can say invoke. That's haptic. I thought there was some kind of haptic. Oh, no, 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 right, because it was actually an object. So it's like activity. I was looking for the function to, send haptic feedback. That's what it is, right? Of course, you gotta, I'm just like Microsoft. I gotta make everything different, right? So this would just make it go beep for a second. So, actually, that would be pretty cool to, let me keep that there for a second. See if it vibrates on a timeout, right? That's what it says. It says on com timeout. Oh no, I should have put it after because it retries. No, that's wrong. Let me drag this down here. This is it. It's because the timeout is when the timer times out, but then we retry. What, 3 times? We retry a couple times. So let me. Well, let's see what happens, right? So, I was hoping you could hear it. Wait a minute, I don't think it did. Let me see. It should vibrate when it times out. Oh, I don't feel anything. All right, well, that was the intended purpose. Man. Anyway, if I go to let me go to definition. All right, well, anyway, I got all kinds of crazy stuff there. That was a rabbit hole we just did not need to go down. But there's a bunch of stuff in here to explore. So hopefully the main stuff will work for you. Communication stuff. You can come in here. You can add pictures. You can take pictures away. You can change, whatever. Oh, my new print, because I was messing with, I was just messing with stuff before, because I had recorded this a couple times. But you can change the wording. You can change the colors. You can change the icon and the name. But basically, so at least hopefully maybe that gave you a head start into that. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm talking all over the place, and like listening to me is kind of a little haphazard and wacky. I kind of feel like it is sometimes, right? So let's see. Oh, right, I'm not hooked up to anything. Also, by the way, the code for that chip is down there, and just to throw this out there real quick, on this chip you can actually set, the name of the Bluetooth device that it is, and you can actually, set this version. It's all just made up, just doesn't mean anything at this point. So when I come in here, let me first of all, let me set up to the device, to one of these chips. So let's see, let's go to OS Jam 2, and we'll say we're done, and we'll say we're back, and let's try to turn the LED on. Oh, you can't see. Oh, look at this. What a terrible guy. What an awful person. All right, come on, get out of here. So turn the LED off. What? Why it take so long? Well, at least it waited, right? At least it was polite enough to just wait, not like driving to work or something. And then, like, get the... Oh, I got this... It's still running. Oh, that's why it took so long. This is still hooked up to the debugger. That's why. You get so the name it pulls out is just whatever you make up. Remember I showed you the version, the same thing. Just whatever you make up, and get LED status. You return LED off. It'll return what the status is. And just real quick, if you here's the commands. See this set of commands? I just made these commands up. Right now, basically what it is it's this simple command has. Basically has two properties, name and command. And actually, it's not important to look at that so much. But that the commands I made up, it's like they're like AT commands. Like AT01 means, well, you can see, right? You see what it means. ATN is get device name, ATS, and I just made this stuff up. And so if I pull up the chip code, actually, right, here is the function, this BT event, Bluetooth event handler, where we're looking at it. And we're saying, is what came in AT01? If it is, then, you know, turn the LED on. Is it AT02? Else if. Look how corny and backward, like, not, like simple, right? Like simpleton stuff. If the else if else if the input buffer is ATN, you know, just print. And what is this Bluetooth name? Remember we were pointing at that before. Bluetooth name is this thing way up here. So it's just like we set Bluetooth name, and here's this thing called Bluetooth name, and then down here when we receive ATN, we just send Bluetooth name. That's all we do, right? But the beauty is we go back and forth between the firmware version, ATS, you know, ATZ special. The ATZ is funky. You want to make this lock up and get messed up, reset and send, and then this thing will just start acting wacky. I can't, you know, then you have to like go into setup or something, because it won't ever enable. So that's actually a bug in the software. LED on the LED, right? But if you hit reset, it'll go ahead and reset it. See, watch, the chip will reset. I made that blinky light thing reset. Yeah, there it is. That right. That's I put that in. Oh, I never fixed the LED. Anyway, I thought I did fix that, man. Anyway, you get the point. That's pretty funny. What happened? So that's weird, right? Didn't we fix that? I thought we fixed that. Yeah. Let me look over here. Let me restart this thing. Because remember we were messing with the buttons and the converter and the you know, the input is blocked, and you had to put the opposite in because it was like is enabled if the input is blocked. No, is enabled if the input is not blocked. But I thought we fixed it. Okay. Yeah. Just things like where you disable buttons so the user can't keep hitting it. That's just like a lot of developers can't be bothered with stuff like that, especially developers who don't like to do front-end stuff. It's like, oh my God, man. It's like, you're going to bother me with this? You're going to bother me with a button that's enabled or disabled or a color or something? It's like, yeah, man. It's no different than the dashboard of a car, isn't it? People freaking hire PhDs and stuff to make sure your freaking hazard light isn't too hard to reach. So yeah, pay a little bit of attention. Okay, I'm babbling to myself. I think that's enough for now. I just wanted to give you guys a head start, a key into this thing so that you can, it's really designed for like just get right in there, man, get going. So thanks for coming by. Appreciate everything. Appreciate you guys. And I will catch you, you know, somewhere in the future.